Well, this is a funny looking suitcase. I wonder what could be inside. Could this be some sort of tape recorder? The answer to that question is yes and no. It's a 1949 Webster-Chicago model 180-1 electronic memory. And this is a birthday present. I got this back in early December, and it was from my folks. The only part that I had to replace was the power cord to make it work. The original power cord had been coiled up for so long that when I went to uncoil it, all the insulation just cracked off. It was shot, basically. So I put on a new cord and it fired right up. Kind of like it just did there. On the front, you can see the different knobs. I'm not going to bother zooming in because you can see it pretty much well enough as it is. There's rooster head knobs, so there's the volume, the record and listen switch, so this is like record and playback. The input for the microphone or line in, depending on which plug you tap. They're Jones plugs, by the way. Then the output over here, the tone and on switch, and the output selector. 1 is the internal speaker. Number 2 is a loudspeaker, which for the output, and then number 3 is a high, like for a crystal earpiece kind of thing. And you can see the function selector up here. It's kind of interesting, really, how they did this. The take-up drum is removable. You can see the in grooves, and there's a couple little notches on top of this weird funny wheel in there. Now I'll move on to how the inside works, and then I'll do a demonstration of it. Here is the internal deck and transport mechanism of the Webster-Chicago. You can see the motor is right here. The rubber tire that's on this rubs up against the feed reel when you're rewinding, because the motor moves over. You can see that I'm moving it with the screwdriver. It moves over and touches the bottom of this, or the edge actually. And when you put it in play mode, it moves the motor over that way, kind of. You can't really see it. But it moves it over just enough that it causes this idler to be forced up against the take-up drum, allowing it to spin. The tape counter over here also has an idler wheel. There's also a fuse here. You can see the head without the bakelite cover. You can see the linkages, which are moved by a small... It's hard to... I can't take off this part, but I'd show you. But there's the number of nubs on the inside of that which rub up against this, disengaging and engaging the brakes and moving the motor. You can also see the pilot light here, and also the arms for the automatic stop. When it's in run mode, if you move it in, there's a switch underneath the deck, but between the deck and the plate underneath it, so you can't really see it. But it's there, and it turns off the electrical power. And that is until you disengage the function selector. You can see the little groove that's there. This section over here that I'm mostly lighting up, that's where the erase head is. And this part over here is actually the playback and record head. Right there, you can see the worm gear, which is driven by the take-up drum, and it moves that little cogged wheel. And there's a little thing on the back of it that rubs up against this arm that it's also attached to. You can see the arm there. And that moves the head up and down. But there's a better way to see the arm. And you can also see where it attaches onto the inside of the head, because the head moves up and down like this, right? The head wires are actually in this sheathed cable, which is actually a spring. So it defeats that weakest link property the head wires have when they move. So this the connection, the mechanical connection and solder joints and everything are all secure. But this actual whole cable moves and it's sheathed, so it doesn't bend the wrong way. You can also see just how much copper they used in this thing. The entire deck and chassis and frame of this entire thing is made out of solid copper. You can see a number of the tubes here. These metal can capacitors are still good. They're also the originals for the thing. You can see the large speaker there. This monstrosity is the record and play switch. There's the microphone input, that thing that I'm lighting up down in the bottom corner. The volume control, the tone and on switch, the output, a bunch of resistors and things. It's an enormous carbon resistor. And then there's the output selector. This big black thing is the transformer that I'm shining light on at the top. You can see the switch system. This little thing, when you turn the selector lever, there's a shaft that runs up to the top of the selector, and it moves those so that the switches can be engaged and disengaged. It's kind of an interesting and very simple system. Before I show you the recording, I'll show you what the wire looks like. I call this stuff industrial dental floss. You can sort of see the light glinting off of it. Making it move up and down the light. You can see it. It's a bit thicker than a human hair. One thing that prevents problems with recording, if wire twists, right? So they made the head sort of C-shaped. So the wire sits in the C, and you don't have to worry about it. So when it twists, because the poles are cupped around the wire, you don't have to worry about it twisting so much. The only problem you have with dropouts is when it comes to a kink in the wire, or you hit a knot. You have to do square knots to splice this stuff. You can't. There's no such thing as splicing tape for wire. I suppose that's an advantage. The disadvantage is it's mayhem when it uncoils. Alright, that should be good now. This is the Webster-Chicago Model 180-1 wire recorder. It's operating on all original electronic components. The only part that was replaced was the power cord. The capacitors do not warrant replacement because the machine functions perfectly, and I don't use it enough to bother replacing the capacitors, not that I actually have the components. So I don't think I'll worry about that too much. Watch the baler go up and down that. Testing 1 2 3 4. Testing 1 2 3 4. Talking it right up to the microphone. Basically it. And you can actually make it sound so he talks backwards. Oh, I've spent more time than I wanted to doing this. Come on. I wanted to spend this time showing you what's on inside the manual and things like that. Anyway, Webster-Chicago Model 180 manual features and things like that. How to record. Getting ready to record. Turn it on. That's a good one. How to rewind and play back, how to erase recordings, recording long programs, how to record from a radio phono, microphone techniques, uses in the home, recording concerts and things like that, and tunes. Off radio. Pre-selected tunes for parties. Recording yourself. Recording sports like fights. Criticizing athletic events in the field, etc., etc. I think this is a hobby. It talks about some of the business and professions. Microphone extensions and other adapters. How to splice readers, splicing wire, square knots. I edited out the part where the wire broke and got tangled up. Tuning the recording heads. You can actually use a piece of string that's doused in alcohol. Schematic diagram and the parts list. A lot of parts. Very simple. Thanks for watching.